Hi, my name is Frida Sten, and this is my book review of Mage of No Renown, the first book in the Tales of Terralorn series by Kel Kade, also known as Wesson's origin story. Yeah, so I do not like talking to the camera. I am not good at it, and I do not believe in improving myself and getting better at it. So instead of watching this beautiful face, you will get to watch me draw some fan art of Wesson. Because honestly, I think that will be more enjoyable for all parties involved. Enjoy! Now, firstly, I imagine you have two questions. One, do I need to read this book to understand the rest of the series? And two, in which order should I read this book? For question one, no. I have read all the books up to Night of Shadows, and in my opinion, you will understand what's going on just fine without reading this book. This book will give you a deeper understanding of the series as a whole, but everything important is explained in the main story. For question two, I am going to give you the standard read it in the order it was published answer. So after Kingdoms and Chaos. You can read it in the middle of or after Reign of Madness, because the last scene in the book is Wesson meeting Reskin and the gang. However, your experience of the two books after Reign of Madness will be altered. But if you have already read The Mage of No Renown and are now wondering, will I be able to enjoy the rest of the series if I've already read this one, then I would say don't worry about it. You will know things before they are explained in the series, but you'll be fine. It's okay. With that being out of the way, I will now give you a short review of this book before delving into the spoilers of it all. The reason Kingstark Tidings is my favorite series of all time is not because of the world building, or the magic system, or the romantic subplots. Those things were all pretty standard fantasy, except the romance part, which was plain bad. What attracted me so much to the series was the characters and their platonic relationships with each other. And Nick Podell's Oscar-level performance, of course. I don't dislike Wesson, but he is not even on my top 10 most favorite characters. He has a very interesting backstory, it can rival Reskin's, but that doesn't change the fact that I don't find Wesson interesting on his own, as a character. If you disagree with me on that, you are going to love this book. But even if you love Wesson as a character, there is still one major problem with this book. And that is the fact that he doesn't get any character development. He just keeps doubling down on not wanting to become a battle mage and ignores every example of when destruction can be good. Still, for me, what makes this series so great is Reskin. I have never seen a character like him before. His borderline Mary Sue character going around creating criminal empires on a whim, shrugging off impossible tasks like it's just another Thursday, all while being clueless about social norms and religiously following rules and a purpose he doesn't even understand. That is what made this series great for me. And given that Reskin is only in the story right at the end of this book, it just wasn't all that interesting for me. If this was my introduction to the series, I would not have bought the rest of the books. But because I was already deeply invested in this world, I could enjoy the ever-present Easter eggs and the expansion of the world. Wesson's relationship with his master was compelling, and I hope to see more of him in future books. I didn't really get attached to any of Wesson's friends though. And while there isn't as much action as it is in the average King Stark Tidings book, there is still a fair bit of it. This is a good book, but Reskin's absence is felt. That is about all I have to say about this book in a spoiler-free fashion. Now, let's get over to the part where you have better read this book, and preferably past Kingdoms and Chaos. The prologue is Reskin's masters talking to King Borderin. We learn nothing we didn't already know from Conwyn's revelations, other than a confirmation that Conwyn was telling the truth, which I didn't doubt in the first place. The rest of the prologue is about Wesson's parents, and here we are presented with one of the major conflicts of this book. We learn that Wesson's father carried something he was constantly checking for spies over, something that absolutely could not be damaged. This is Wesson's Earth Mage father who was crushed to death by some rocks, if you remember from book 4. What a tragic accident. We then cut to Wesson as a child playing with Dia, the girl he later wants to marry. When he gets home, he learns the family has money problems and that his mother will have to marry again. This is very upsetting for Wesson because he wants his mother to be happy, and she in no uncertain terms spells out that she's not in love with the man she's marrying. But also because he will be cheated out of his inheritance if he can't get some money of his own. And because he has yet to realize he's a mage, there is basically no way for him to make that kind of money. That night he has a dream of himself being chased through the forest. Then he sees cities under siege and fires burning down everything. People are dying, shadows swarming everything and everyone. He sees a forest of palaces beyond the sea, all falling to the shadow, all while a raven caws. I think most of the things in this prophetic dream are pretty straightforward. The only thing I'm not sure of is if the shadow is Reskin or the demons. Reskin is the emperor of many territories, and his influence is felt everywhere, so he fits the shadow. The demons have infestuated all the territories and are causing chaos, so they fit too. I'm not sure what I prefer. Shadows have symbolically a very negative connotation, so if Reskin is the shadow, it does make you think, is what Reskin's doing really for the best? It makes it all more complicated. When another mage analyzes the dream, and he confirms it was prophetic, he says the way Wesson describes it, it's like he's the savior in the vision. Which is interesting, isn't it? What if Wesson is the hero of the story and is going to save the world from Reskin and Kadean? In book 4, Reskin says that he doesn't know of a single prophecy that has turned out to be real. But it has been shown that Reskin has huge gaps in his knowledge about mages, so I don't think this is a slip-up from Kel's side. I just wonder why Wesson didn't perk up and say something about it. Maybe he wasn't there and I'm not remembering it correctly. Anyway, we get a little Easter egg when Wesson goes to buy new books. He's picking between two practical books and Tales of the Shadow Knight, a very popular and exciting book that costs the same amount as 2 books. Wesson buys the 2 practical books, because when would he ever need to know about the things in Tales of the Shadow Knight? That doesn't happen. Silly. And now we learn about the bloody past Wesson told Tam about in the beginning of the story. Little Wesson and Dia were attacked by some older kids. When one of them kicked and was going to punch Dia, Wesson's magic manifested itself by blasting the boy away from Dia. But he also injured Dia's pet lamb, and when she demanded he heal her, because he is a mage and mages can heal, he instead did what he will be known for most of this book, and made the lamb explode. After that, he goes home to his mother, who tells him his father was not a soldier, but a mage, and that he was murdered because he stole a dangerous item he was afraid would be used against the king. He then hid it where it would never be found. Then there is more bad news for Wesson, because one of the boys died from his injuries, and even though there is a law protecting mages' first use of power, because they can't control themselves, people were now willing to testify that this wasn't his first use of power. So now he's going to be tried for murder by a mob. And we all know how mob trials go in this world. Seriously, I was so mad when I heard people were going to lie and say he'd done this before. People, you know Wesson, he's a sweet little boy, he wouldn't do that. Anyway, they are afraid of him, so they are willing to do that. But instead of letting himself be tried, he runs away, and now we get to follow him trying not to die as he gets to the Mage Academy. On his way there, he gets picked up by Master Battle Mage Atrecius, Atrecius? Was that how you pronounce his name? Yeah, it was. Who takes him to the estate to learn control before he ultimately goes to the academy. At the estate, he meets multiple mages in training. The only ones important for this book is Tika, also known as Ticarius, his best friend, and Liska, Atrecius' daughter. She later becomes apprentice to Beringish the Necromancer. She's really not important other than that. It is a good thing that all the apprentices are there, because otherwise Atrecius would have such a time with putting out Wesson's literal fires, because every time Wesson tries to cast a spell, it either explodes, or sets something on fire. Most of the apprentices aren't going to the Mage Academy for various reasons. And if you don't go to the Mage Academy, you don't get read by a reader. You then have to figure out what your ratio is by trial and error. However, trial and error in Wesson's case can lead to someone dying. So they take a trip to the Mage Academy earlier than expected. On the way, Wesson gets attacked by a robber, but is saved by a sword bearer. He briefly gets a look at the enchantments in the blade, and his master remarks that must means he has natural destructive magic to see them so effortlessly. This appears to be a slip-up from Kel, because when Wesson first sees Reskin's blade, he says it's his first time seeing one. I guess Wesson could have lied to Reskin about that, but that seems both unnecessary and out of character for him. I really like all the wink-wink moments from the main series sprinkled in, like, the chances of you meeting a sword bearer again, well, you won't! They get to the academy and participate in classes, but Wesson is told to not cast without his master present. For those who have followed Wesson's journey so far, everyone understands why. But some asshole teacher threatens Wesson into doing it anyway, and is rewarded by Wesson making a dragon out of fire and burning down a bunch of shit. I was so mad at the teacher, and so happy when it blew up in his face. Literally. I imagine Wesson writing a Reddit post on that r/oh no, consequences, and trending hard. Wesson meets the reader and she tells him he's a natural battle mage, 3 times as strong as a regular mage, and that he has no chance of becoming anything else. Wesson is crushed for a moment, but then decide he will become a regular mage anyway. He is given an ultimatum to pass the generalist test when he's 18 or join the Battle Mage Academy anyway. In the meantime, he will stay with Atrecius and learn everything he can about constructive magic. Cut to Beringish finding out that Lord Seth's son is a natural battle mage. He immediately starts speculating that Wesson could be either the vessel himself or know where it is, so Beringish sticks an assassin on him. Now, I never understood why Beringish didn't order the assassin to search through Wesson's things. Was it just so hard to break into Atrecius' estate? Even if you think it's been hidden somewhere, wouldn't you at least check the obvious places first? Anyway, the assassin watches Wesson for years. At one point, Beringish creates a showcase near Wesson's home so Wesson will both be out in the open and display if he's the vessel or not. At some point, the mission shifted and Beringish now wants Wesson dead. The assassin isn't taking the assignment too seriously. He thinks Wesson is a useless mage and that it will be easy. Beringish has not told the assassin that Wesson is a battle mage, and despite having watched Wesson explode things for years, he has not figured it out on his own either. We get another little Easter egg when Wesson walks by some gargoyles who are very lifelike, and thinks to himself how horrible it must be to be turned to stone. The showdown with the assassin doesn't go the way either of them expects, because this is the first time we meet Wesson's demonic side. He laughs while casting spell in a language he doesn't understand. The assassin survives and Wesson passes out from a crossbow bolt in his leg. The assassin mentions that the Black Hall discourages its members from accepting hits on mages, and Damascus the assassin just found out why. Later, Wesson takes the journeyman exam and passes, but he still has to spend some time at the Battle Mage Academy so he can see what he's missing out on. Beringish calls off the assassin because there is no way Wesson could have passed that exam if he'd been the one Beringish was looking for. The assassin, however, is holding a grudge for all the years he's wasted watching this useless boy. Just like Beringish, the Archmage didn't think what Wesson did was possible with how much destructive magic he's got. It's actually really funny to me how Wesson's been giving Reskin shit about his impossible magic use when he's gotten the same reaction for his use of both constructive and destructive magic. I personally think that just like mundanes can't really use focus shields and whatnot, what Wesson is doing is impossible, and the only reason he can do it is because him on his own is a constructive mage, and the demon possessing him is the destructive. Damascus returns to the Black Hall, and we find out that the first lip who fell to the Raven, Briesh, was the likely successor. Not sure how important it is, but I found it interesting that the second best assassin in the hall was worked off by Reskin like absolutely nothing. Battlemaster Roan hates Wesson's gut, mainly because he understands that he has no way of controlling him. And the moment where Wesson blocks the magic of the bullies who try to kill him and Tika, chef's kiss on that. Wesson can be such a badass when he wants to be, really giving Aang energy. Just because you're a pacifist doesn't mean you can't be cool. The assassin with the grudge sends Wesson a letter that he has Dia and will kill her if Wesson doesn't show up to meet him without alerting the battle mages. Since Tika isn't a battle mage, he brings him along anyway. The assassin has brought illegal mage neutralizing stones, so Wesson can't overpower him. Wesson and Tika manages to neutralize the neutralizing stones, but Tika dies. Wesson goes full-on demon on his ass, and lets loose to the point that he damages the Battle Mage Academy even at that distance. In the end, he gets 1 out of 2 questions answered. Is Dia safe? And she is. She was never even there in the first place. Here, I personally wanted him to threaten torture to get the answer, who hired you? I really think the destruction he just caused would make it believable so he wouldn't actually have to lift another finger to convince him. But I guess it's in character for Wesson to not even raise it as a hypothetical solution. And the series has established the real-world fact that torture is not a reliable source of information. So yeah, a girl can dream about torture. Anyway, Wesson gets back to the Battle Mage Academy. Roan wants him to enroll immediately. Wesson responds, "Bitch, you thought?" Ronan does some threatening. Wesson goes, "Bitch, you want me as an enemy?" Roan says he will make sure Wesson never becomes famous. Wesson counters, "Cool story, bro," and leaves. But not before his master can tell him he thinks of him as a son. Which I am always a sucker for, and I will never mind how many times it's used in a series. Wesson leaves with Sheila the donkey and sets out on what I'm sure will be a very eventless and boring and non-renowning career. The story ends with Wesson meeting Reskin and the gang, and getting offered a job. The end. Also, I just want to read you the description of Wesson in Reign of Madness. The mage was about Reskin's age, and he had short, unruly hair somewhere between dark blonde and light brown, with hints of highlights bleached by the sun. His skin was lightly tanned, and he had a light scattering of freckles across his nose. His eyes were almost as light as Reskin's, except they contained equal parts blue and green mixed together. With his thick lashes, full lips, and high cheekbones, he was the kind of pretty young man a mother would forever call her sweet baby boy, the girls would innocently flirt with and call friend, and the boys would beat up at every chance. Now, across the entire series and this book, Wesson constantly gets mistaken for a girl. And I just want to ask you, is this the kind of person you would at any point mistake for female? Is this the kind of adult you would at any point think, oh, that's clearly a girl? Is this the kind of man the Lon Lareshi would not want to get together with? No, it is not. It simply isn't. This is a great artwork. It looks so cool. This is the kind of person you want to read a fantasy book about. Not of. Although I wouldn't mind if Wesson wrote a book. That would be great. Anyway, may I instead present this piece of work made by a 22-year-old who just graduated art school. Now, I will be the first to admit that this is not the greatest artwork in the world. This is far superior as far as artworks go. But this is the kind of man I would buy that someone would mistake for a girl. This is pretty. This is someone girls would flirt with and boys would beat up if they could. Now, once again, I am not saying that this is a better artwork than this. It is not, but it is more accurate. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.